Hello Dream Theater fans, and welcome to episode number 4 of the Let's Learn Falling into Infinity Guitar and Analysis series. Pumpkins, logs, tree trunks, and the promises of a politician. These are all things that we know to be hollow, or at least able to be hollowed out. Now, did you know that you could also hollow out something as intangible as time? Well, guess what? I didn't know that until today either. But that's exactly what we are going to do. 365 days, gutted and crash landed right into the goddamn ocean. Through every single note, every single time change, every single chord progression, in a full, detailed musical analysis of Hollow Years by Dream Theater. Hollow Years is a result of combining the influence of every single 90s alternative band, specifically the mid-90s, and top-level Englishman Sting. Between the sexy Spanish guitar solos and the slightly overdriven 12-string guitars, we get a perfect synthesis of late 80s new age world music and the concurrent stylings of bands like Sister Hazel and Fastball. Now, before a single guitar note is even played, Derek Sherinian sets the tone of the entire song with this ambient keyboard fade-in. It sounds like a sad ocean of infinite memories of bygone John Mayongs. Immediately following that, the first guitar entrance happens and manifests itself as a very sweet and short Spanish-style guitar solo. But before getting into the solo, let's take a look at the rhythm guitar that's strumming underneath. A very simple sounding chord progression, but with some voicings that are very difficult to play. Leave it to Dream Theater to make something that should be easy very hard. Let's just go chord by chord. So like I said, this D minor with the added ninth, we're basically playing the power chord and then adding the middle finger in there to get the third. So we have the root, fifth, octave, flat third, and the ninth. A beautiful sounding chord with that nice minor second dissonance right on the very top. Yeah, that sound is in there on top of the chord, so that's pretty cool. And then essentially, we just strum it in this very 16th note style rhythm. It's basically like this. Boom, chicka, boom, chicka, boom, chicka, boom. With the first held out a little bit longer, so. Boom, chicka, boom, ba-da-ba-da. Okay, so we got to keep that feel going for most of the song, actually. So there's the D minor chord. The second chord is this shape. Okay, so this is the 8th fret of the low E, skip the A string, go straight for the 7th fret there. So that's in common with the first chord. We keep that ring finger there. And we also keep the middle finger there as well. Look at that. So we're basically playing there, open G, and the 6th fret, and also the high E on top. Okay, so it's basically all the same notes. We're just changing the bass note and adding an open G in there. Now, what I'm going to say this is because it's not really going to a C necessarily. It doesn't sound like a C chord. It just sounds like the bass note is dropping down. Watch. It still sounds like a very similar chord. So I'm going to say that this is a D minor with an 11th, or a D minor add 9 with an 11th. Or D minor 11th, we can call it, over a C. Alright, so it's like playing a D minor 7 over C, but more complicated. Alright, so we have the C on the bottom, that's the flatted 7th, okay, and that's the root note. Not the root note, or the bass note, I should say. Okay, then we have an A, that's the 5th, G, that's the 4th of the 11th, F is the flatted 3rd, and E is the 9th. Very beautiful sounding chord, and actually sounds quite majestic when you play it by itself like that. But D minor 11 over C. Not very simple. The next chord is among one of the hardest chords to play in the entire song because it requires us to stretch our fingers out immensely. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 fret stretch between our hand, right? So we're basically on a G minor with an added ninth. Now, we basically have to bar the entire 3rd fret like this, and in addition to that, put the middle here on the 5th fret of the A, and then the pinky on the 7th fret of the D string. So we have that stacked 5ths chord, but with the entire bar on top of it. We got to make sure we're holding everything down as well, so really make sure you're crunching in there. Now the thumb should be looking like that. So, okay, so you have your thumb pointing outward so that you can get that angle underneath so you can stretch nice and easy. Not easy, but a little more easily, okay? Prevent from snapping your entire hand in half and having to sue John Petrucci for damages. We don't want to have to do that, right? So essentially we have the root, the 5th, the 9th, okay, that's 1, 5, 9, then the flatted 3rd, 5th, and root, okay? And that makes up that entire chord. So far we have the 1 chord, the 1 chord as a 7th, so a 1, 6, 4, 2, that's how you denote a 3rd inversion 7th chord, and the 4 chord. So 1 to 4 for the most part. So that's pretty simple, function-wise. Now this next chord sort of resembles a 5 chord, right? Definitely has an A7 shape coming in right here, but we have this first part that muddies the water a little bit. That also resolves down to there. So it's a little more that meets the eye right here. So we're going to have to elaborate on that. Let's hop over to the keyboard part real fast so we can figure out what this A chord is actually supposed to be in the context of the song. As you can tell, the quality of the patch is very quiet, almost like a swell. But listen to the last 2 chords one more time in the keyboards. These 2 chords are actually a G minor triad moving to an A chord. So really this progression is a minor 4 to 5, but over a pedal A, which makes it sound incredibly tense. And here's what a G minor over A sounds like. You get 0 sense of comfort or stability with that chord. It's got to go somewhere, right? I kind of like just playing that over and over again and keeping the suspense building so that you're hanging on the edge of your seats and you're not able to go anywhere. Don't click off this YouTube video. In fact, I'm going to program this YouTube video to make it impossible for you to click off of it. But yeah, listen to how tense that is. A G minor over an A, which then resolves to the A. Alright, so that's the styling there. Now, in the guitar part, if you remember, there you go. You have an open G, and then going to that voicing. So now the open G, in this case, is just replaced by the 7th fret. So that's a pure G minor on top of an A, going to the A7. We're actually going to see that in the next section, but we'll hold off on that for now. But either way, let's move on with the next couple chords that end out that first time around. So we actually come back into the D minor once again with that rhythm, but then right on the upbeat, right at the end of that, we're going to be hitting this chord. Now that is what I call a Kevin Moore chord, because on Images and Words, he was using these type of voicings quite frequently. I believe this chord can be found in Surrounded. I think it can be found in Wait for Sleep. But yeah, it's called an A minor 11th. And that A minor is just the minor 5 chord. We come back around for the second repeat back on D minor. And we're playing basically all of the same stuff we just had. Here it is. Big stretch. That ending right there is the only difference we have between the second and the first ending. So the first ending we have the D to the A minor 11th. Here we have D over A. And right on the downbeat of that next part, we have a B flat major 7th with an E on top. Alright, so that's basically the root major 7th, 3rd, the 5th, and then the sharp 11th as the E. So this E being on top, creating that minor 2nd, creates a lot of incredibly colorful chord notes. Okay? Once again, I could just bathe in this, and I think I'm going to take a bath in this chord later on. Right? My water actually turns into notes, musical notes, as through the process of reverse osmosis. Okay? So now that we have a handle on those chords, let's hop into this beautiful Spanish-style guitar solo. Yes, what a beautiful sound. Allow me to play it slow for you. Very nice, very tasty, and perfectly melodic. And I'm going to explain why in just a second. Let's just take the very first phrase there. We're going to divide this up into 4 sections. We're going to go like this. Watch. That's the very first part. So let's talk about the technique, and we'll talk about the frets a little bit. We're starting over on the 7th on the D string like this with the pointer finger, alright? And then you're immediately going to go to the ring and pull off onto the pointer for the next 2 notes. Alright, so that's how you get that articulation. And then you're immediately going to go right up there to the 10th fret. Following that, you're going to slide from the 8th into the 10th, hammer into the next one, and then pluck again. So it's crucial that you do that. Slide, pick, hammer, pick. Okay, crucial for the articulation. One more time. Pull off, boom, slide, hammer, pick. Alright, so now that we have that, the next part changes the positioning around a little bit. You start on the ring finger this time, on the 8th fret. Alright, so on a very tense note. This is all on top of the A, by the way, so that's the sound we're creating. And then we're going up to the 7th, pulling off into the 6th, alright, a half step down. So instead of doing a whole step motion, we're doing a half, and then sliding up to the 9th just like that, and then we do the same type of motion just down the scale, 1 note. So let's get that again. Very nice. The second half of the solo takes the same melodic themes, but develops them in a more busy fashion. I'll play the next part for you. So it sounds familiar, right? It starts off exactly the same with the hammer, or the pull, I should say. It's a pull off. And then we come over here, sliding into the 13th fret, going all the way down to the 8th. Now this is basically over the top of the G minor chord, and this is a sus4 to the flatted 3 to the 2 to the 1. So you're just going 4, 3, 2, 1 in a melodic sense. One more time. And continuing that phrasing, we do the same thing as we did on the other one, or I should say the second lick. We're doing it like this. Watch. So a totally different ending, but not really that crazy when all things are considered. We're still doing the same pull-off with the half step, sliding into the 9th fret there, and then here, anticipating the D minor, and then just playing 2, 3, 1 right there. Now to get that articulation down, you got to start by playing this. Use your middle finger maybe, and then basically a hammer on into a pull-off. and then pluck the last final note with a little bit of vibrato at the end as it moves into the verse section. All in all, you want to get into the headspace of a Spanish romancer. That's right, a top-level gondola driver going right down the river and right into the sunset. Or maybe not right into the sunset, that might be a little too hot to handle, a little too hot for TV. Now, remember when I said that it sounded like Sting, and he's an Englishman? So this is kind of ironic, a little bit strange that we have an Englishman that sounds like a Spanish romancer. Well, maybe we're taking Sting along for the boat ride. Maybe that's our hot date for the night. Anyway, I don't really want to think about that. That's going to be a very odd ending to probably a very long and arduous night hanging out with Sting. But let's get into this verse guitar, which follows the same basic idea, but we're finger picking some chords that are reminiscent of the ones we saw in the introduction. Let's check that out. Once again surrounded by a brilliant D minor. Reminiscent of that introduction, alright, so as we move along we can see the first two chord shapes, actually the first three chord shapes are exactly the same, but we have to change something up there, and then this is where things get different. Here, we return, okay? So understanding where the similarities are and the differences will make this a lot easier to remember. So we're starting on that D minor and just going straight up the chord. 1 and 2 and. We do the same rhythm coming down with this. That's the D minor 11th over the C. Then we come into this G minor. Now we got to be careful here. We got to do a completely different technique than we've ever seen before. So you're going to start by barring this, but see how I move my pointer finger up to grab the higher notes? That's the only way you're going to be able to get all of those out cleanly and clearly. Otherwise, unless you have like mutant hands, but I'm not sure. It's very hard to get that top note out, at least for me anyway. So we got to get up like that. You see how I'm hopping? And it doesn't sound like I'm stopping any notes on the bottom. We can still let it ring mighty fine. Just make sure you're beyond the D string before you move that position. The two chords that are different come up right next. We have a B flat 6 chord that looks like this. And we're basically just going right up 8th notes. Okay, we have the 1st fret, that's a B flat root. 3rd fret, that's the 5th. Open G is the 6th. And the C is the 9. So we have a 69 in this song, and I haven't seen this in a little bit, and I'm actually kind of relieved that we have come back to the, what's the word I'm looking for, the sophomoric sense of humor that these guys have, right? To put a 69 in the middle of their songs. It's so funny, unbelievable. It actually is incredibly funny. If you don't think it's funny, then get out of here. So we got this going here. Same deal, but we're moving that up a whole step to C, alright? So, and we also have to pluck those two strings at the same time. And we're coming down those two unison Gs. And then E, D right at the top. So this is a C with an added 9th. And then right into D minor. Nice movement at the end there. A much different way of approaching the chord than we did in the introduction. Keeping it syncopated and then arpeggiating just like that. So we're starting at the bottom, going 1, 2 notes, then up to the top, 3 notes down. That's a nice stepwise motion there within the chord. That's actually Mi, Re, Do, or Figaro, but within a chord and played very nicely. So far we have a little bit of rhythmic fanciness going on. Now of course, we're in a prog band playing in 4/4, so the rhythm better be interesting. Otherwise, People in a prog audience are known to fall asleep and immediately discorporate when the song becomes too boring or not busy enough. So that's why there's so few prog rock fans out there in the world, because they discorporate live within the studio audience. Can you believe that? We continue on with the second ending. So let's check that out. We come back to D minor, that's 1, 2, the D minor 7th in third inversion, so that's 1, 6, 4, 2, to the G minor 9. Make sure you hop up there. That's the minor 4 chord. Same B flat C. And then here, instead of going to that D minor, we go right to a 5 chord, but it's a G minor. It's the same voicing that Derek Sherinian was using on the keyboards before, but we had the open G, but this time we're playing that D on the G string. So we have B flat, D, and G. That's a G minor on top of an A, going right to A7 with the 5th, 6th, and 5th frets right there, and then with this little thing at the end. And that's the same rhythmic motif as the first ending. That tension on those last 2 chords helps to set us up for the next pre-chorus section, which contains 4 very repetitive and dissonant chords in the acoustic part, and a couple other guitars added into the mix. The first of which being a 6-string electric guitar on a clean channel where it's slightly broken up, there's a little bit of drive on it, and a 12-string electric guitar, which I believe is the first that we've ever seen from Mr. Petrucci in his career at this point. But I don't have a 12-string electric, so I'm just going to be playing it on the 6-string with a little bit of overdrive added into it. So enjoy the sounds of the Hollow Years pre-chorus. Acoustic side, we're just playing 4 repetitive chords with a very similar shape on the very top with a moving bass line. And this is here to support the 6-string arpeggios going on top. And repetition is the name of the game. We have a boom, chicka boom, chicka boom, chicka boom. Down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down. Rhythm going the entire way through. So let me just play that slowly. Ready? The bass line. First 2 chords don't have an open G, but the last 2 chords do. You see that? And we're basically keeping those shapes exactly the same, and of course at the end we had a B flat for double the time, and then a C sus4, just like that. Well, let's go back to the beginning here. We have that D minor add 9 once again to start it. Okay, and that's going on for the first couple of beats. Down to this. Alright, now we saw that once very briefly in the introduction, right at the end. That's the B flat major 7 with the sharp 11th, and that's our flat 6 chord. Here we're going back to that D minor 11th over C. Alright, same sort of deal. That's another 1 chord, by the way. And we have this one, which is the same deal but on top of an A. So we can say that's a D minor 11th over A as well. So a second inversion 1 chord. Now that's 3 1 chords in one progression. That's one way to look at it. How funny is that? It's not funny at all. Because we can actually look at this 2 different ways. You can look at it as one extended 1 chord for almost the entire thing except for the B flat. Or you can move everything along and say it's 1, flat 6, flat 7, which means we would have to rename this chord to basically a C6 add 4 or add 11th. So it's like a C sus4, but it's got a 6 and a 3rd in it. Very nice sounding chord, just like it was before. And then the A would basically be an A minor 7th because you have the flat 7th in the open G, and then a sharp 5th. Alright, so that's almost like a Steely Dan type of chord. It doesn't sound very dissonant, it actually sounds very nice. So that's another way you can look at it. That would be the minor 5 chord as well. So, like I said, it's all semantics at this point, but it's fun to think about it either way. You run into this extended 1 chord phenomenon quite a lot when you have a repetitive shape on the top with a moving bass line. So that D minor just keeps getting inverted over and over and over again. Now, that flat 6 is so prominent that you can't really rationalize it as a 1 chord, but it does have a D minor triad on top of it. Remember, a B flat major 7 is just a D minor chord over a B flat. So if you have D minor / B flat, that's B flat major 7. And here with the C and the A, well, like I said, it's all just repetitive things up at the top. Now, speaking of repetitive things, let's take a look at the 6-string electric guitar that comes in on top of that. So it's a pretty basic line, but it has to be performed verbatim in order to get the proper style across. So check this out. We're basically going to hold all the chords as we normally would from the arpeggios, or I should say the strummed chords in the acoustic. So we're not going to be playing every single note that we're holding down. So we're starting off now with D minor add 9, just like this. Alright, so A string, high E, B, and G. Basically for the root, 9th, flat 3rd, and root. A very basic sounding arpeggio, but it does the trick. Very nice. Then we come down here, only the bass note changes, and the amount of notes we play on top. So we have the B flat down here, low E, and B, and that's it. So there's only 2 notes on top of this one. First one had 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. How many guesses here? A guess to as many notes we're gonna have next on the C. Watch this. So we're still gonna hold this the same exact way. We're gonna play it like this though. And that bottom note, that open G, gives us a much lower note than before, and it actually a much heavier note. A lot more weight is put upon that, and it sounds beautiful. And then coming down to the A, do the same thing as the second chord, and we just play 2 notes on top. Now that is basically a flatted 6, a very tense and dramatic interval, as Rick Beato would say, eating potatoes at his dinner table. Now, that's a very tense sound, I must admit. Okay? So basically, here's what we're dealing with here. This repetitive pattern goes around 3 times, just like that. And I could just play this all day, it just sounds so good. Let everything ring out, too, by the way. Count how many notes are being played on top. Check it out. 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And on that very last time, we transition right into that 12 string, alright? And it comes in very seamlessly. It doesn't even sound like the guitar is really changing that much. It just sounds like a little bit of overdrive is being put on it. But the shapes that we're playing are actually right over here. Check this out. Okay, so that's a B flat with an added 9th, basically. Alright, you know what? Maybe I should put the overdrive channel. Let's try that again. Ready? Watch. Very nice. Sounds a lot better with a little bit of that, huh? A lot better. A lot better. What are we, baking over here? So here we go. Oh yeah. And then the C, we're going to keep those same 2 notes on top and then resolve it. So that actually creates a C sus4, with a C being the root and an F being the 4th, and then resolve it to E, which is the major 3rd. Alright? So a very simple transition going into that chorus part, which is going to be in the major tonality, by the way. Okay, enough messing around. Let's get into the first major section of the song, the chorus. this whole progression not on the root. We're starting it on an A, bass note. Alright, so that makes the F chord sounds a little less stable than it would ordinarily be with an F on the bottom, right? So here's a root position, and here's with the A on the bottom. Now that A serves to go to the B flat in a half step motion. Watch this, ready? Did you hear that down at the bottom? Boom, 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 boom. It only has to move a very small increment to get there, okay? And then it keeps the increment small by only going a whole step to the C. Which, by the way, we are playing a sus4 chord there. This sounds a lot like Tom Petty's Free Fallin', but with inversions, right? Now, first time we stay on the C for that entire time, but the second time, watch. We add another chord. Keep with the boom chicka boom, and then right on that upbeat, we're going to hit a D minor 7. That looks like this. Okay, so we're trying to keep as many of these notes the same as possible. If you notice, the C and the F are in the same spot the entire time. Alright, so from here, got C and F on the top, got C and F on top for the B flat, that's the 9th. Okay, the C would be the 9th. And then here we have the C and the F, which create the sus4. Here, the C and the F are the flatted 7th on top of the D and the flatted 3rd. So very nice, and we're not changing around too many notes here. So one more time on that measure. Boom, chicka, boom to the B flat. Boom, chicka, boom. D minor 7, right? And that goes through the entire rest of the measure before starting over again. F over A, which is a 1/6, by the way. B flat to C. Now, the B flat and the C, should be obvious, is the 4 and the 5 chord at this point. Okay, so F is 1, B flat is 4, and C is 5. But this time, whoa, we go right to an A 7th chord. Now, ordinarily I'd say, this is insane, this is crazy. Actually, I would never say that because the A7 makes perfect theoretical sense here. Okay? Basically, it's being used as the 5 chord to get back to D minor. Okay, so that's the 5 to D minor, which was our 1 before. So this makes perfect sense. We're just getting it to go back into the relative minor again. Temporarily, of course. And yeah, or you can call it the 5 of 6, because we're still in F major. Okay, this drops down, same deal. 1, 6, 4, 2, same 1 chord. And then this. We're gonna have to elaborate on this chord a little bit. The chord that we have here is called a G over a B natural. That's a G first inversion triad. Now ordinarily we have a B flat in the key of F. Here's the B flat. And that would be the 4th scale degree as we've seen reflected in the chord progression so far in the chorus with that B flat sus2. That's that 4/5 progression that we love oh so much. Now, how do we arrive at B natural? Well, we need to use a chord known as a secondary dominant to get there. The 5, C in this case, is the dominant to F. So here's C going to F. A G major chord would be the dominant to the C chord, which would be the 5 of the 5, or a secondary dominant. Earlier in the song, we had a G minor chord, which has the notes G, B flat, and D encased within it, or 1, flat, 3, 5. Now that conforms perfectly with the F major scale. It's actually the 2 chord within that. Now, a G major is made just by raising that 3rd. Alright, so now we have G, B natural, and D, making a G major chord. And that's all it takes to change something from minor to major. So returning back to the positions here, we're going to be doing that D minor with the added 9th, D minor 11th over C, this time resolving right into that nice G in first inversion. A beautiful way to get from chord to chord, by the way. And just like I said, the B flat is just a mere half step away once again, where we can finish it off with 4 to to 5, and then landing on 1 for the next section. And of course, to go along with those strums, we have an entire set of arpeggios that are being plucked on that 12-string guitar. This is my 12-string for the day. And we just have a little bit of overdrive on there. Now, we play all the same chord functions as the acoustic guitar, but with this repetitive arpeggio line. So we're still locked in place at the 5th and the 6th fret. Now, you want to make sure you're using your middle finger and your pinky to play both of these notes. And I'll show you why in just a second. But we have the open A string going like this, and then the top 2 notes. That gives us the F chord. Then the B flat's going to be right here, a half step higher, which looks kind of weird going from open A to the 6th fret as being a half step, but that's exactly what it is. We keep going with that, and then we hit the C chord like this. Alright, now when we come up to the top, the second time we do it, instead of going up to the F, we're going to go E, F like this. Alright, so we get that nice little motion on top. Check that out again. F over A, B flat, C sus 4 with the motion on the top. And that gives us that nice melodic, repetitive motion up at the top. I like saying motion a lot. Then we come back around, A to the B flat. Now here, we go right to an open D. And you do the same motion that we did on top of that C chord just before, but with a D minor. So this is basically a D with a flatted 7th, the 9th, resolving very nicely and beautifully into that flatted 3rd. Okay, let me get it one more time. Watch this. Nice 4-chord progression too. I really like the way that sounds. We come back around again for the final time. We're going to do the same deal. Watch this. Ready? And here, we're going to be playing an A major triad. Just a straight up A triad, which we haven't seen yet before in this song. Now, you might be asking, well, Mike, why don't you just play it over here? Well, that's because it's a 12-string guitar. And the way that a 12-string guitar is strung is that on the G, we actually have a very, very, very high G up the octave. Usually like a 9 gauge or like an 8 gauge, tuned all the way up to a G. So a very, very tight string. But you get that very nice octavey and chimey sound coming from that. So that's why we're playing it in this position, because that's where the chiminess is coming from. In order to get that, you can't get it from the B string. You have to get it from the G, alright? So then that is going to progress into this D minor shape that goes like this. Now that's an open D, and then E, B, and G strings, just like that. So it's exactly the same as the pre-chorus, but since we're moving to a different shape, and we have to let that last note ring, we're going to play it in this position instead. Then we do this, just 2 notes. And then once we hit the G over the B, we play it very similarly to the acoustic, but we're just going like this. Very linear, alright? And then we end it off like this. Very beautiful way to do it. Alright, so with that chorus section out of our hair, we can now get into this nice instrumental tag that comes in afterward, which might possibly have one of the simplest chord progressions in the land, and in Dream Theater's career up until this point in 1997. But is it really that simple? Let's find out. That's right, it's Tom Petty's Free Fallin', but in a Dream Theater style. So of course it's not as simple as that, and it never will be, because these guys just don't want to play something easy. F down to the 10th fret. Now that's a D minor 7th chord, alright? You have an F chord on top of D, boom, you got the flat 7th, flat 3rd, and the A, which is the 5th, right on top. So that's just your stereotypical D minor 7th chord. Jazz guys love to play that. Alright, and then we we got to hit this chord. This is basically an F chord on top of a B flat. So we got to stretch big time. This is also known as the Steely Dan chord or a mu chord. All right, this is prevalent in a lot of Steely Dan's music. Watch. It already sounds like a Steely Dan song once you start moving it around, but we only get it for a part of a measure, and then we got to change the bass line again. All right, now that's basically just a C on the bottom of an F. We know the C is the fifth, so that is a 1 in second inversion, or a 1-6-4. All right, so we got F, D minor 7, B flat major 9 to F over C. All right. The second time around, we do all the same chords except the last one changes. Watch this. F, 1, 6, 4, and this. Whoa! Wow, the nerve of this guy. He's basically following what John Mayung is doing in the bass line, and yes, this does happen on the bass line. He's going to a G and playing the F on top. That's an F over a G, or you could even call this a G 11th, all right? You get that nice sus sound. It's an F over a G chord. One more time. And that acts as a perfect resolution coming back into a D minor chord, which, believe it or not, works really well. The only difference within chorus number 2 is within its length. So let's check that out real quick. At the end of the first chorus, we were greeted with this nice instrumental tab right after those final 2 chords. See? So it remained in the major key, and we had that nice little piano line playing almost as like a little treat for us to keep us in that F major. But this time, those final 2 chords go straight into a guitar solo, which is like the intro. Watch, ready? Now the cool thing about this is the crashing down of hollow years, the melody. Crashing down of hollow years. He's singing the root note F, which of course on an F major chord is the root. It makes perfect sense. But coming in here, hollow years, the same exact note has a little bit different of an effect when played on top of a D minor. On top of a D, it's the F, or the flatted third. And has a very, very nice sound, nice harmony to take us into the guitar solo in a very smooth manner. Let's get into the first part of the guitar solo. This one resembles the very first lick that we found in the introduction, but we have some embellishments and busyness at the end of it. Check this out, ready? Here it is. Very, very nice sound. Now check that out. So everything is the same, except this part. And you want to make sure you're using that same articulation. Finger-wise, you can use the middle ring and the pointer. You can also use your pinky if you want, but you're going to have fingers that are nice and strong and capable of doing hammer-ons. So watch this. See that? You're going to pick those first 2 notes. That's a very sharp articulation. Instead of going like this, right? It's choosing to do the first 2 notes hard instead. And then hammering into that 6th fret, and basically not picking again until we get back up to the 8th fret. The second phrase follows a very similar pattern. We're embellishing after playing the same thing we're used to. And right here, there's a very subtle difference in the first half. Watch. So check that out. We don't slide like we did in the intro. In the intro, we did this. But here, we're not sliding, we're just hitting it dead on. And then right after that, we have to switch positions into this 10th fret D minor position like this. That's one of my favorite licks in this solo. It's just beautiful. Nice little grace note pull off there. So we're starting on the 10th fret of the B and then moving up to the E. This is A to F. And then to E with a nice quick pull off, grace note, into the 12th fret and the 10th. The third phrase uses the same lick as the first time around, but up the octave and changes everything else beyond that point. So here we go. Ready? Wow, so some fancy stuff going on there, but very, 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 very conceptual. All right, so this part is very consistent with the earlier part that we saw. That first lick, we did this. We went down to that 6th fret and 5th fret position using 5, 6, and 8. Well, with this one, look at this. We also go down to the 5th, 6th, and 8th fret as well, just on a different string, so it gives it a totally different sound. But let's take a look here. We have, those are the same 3 notes that we started with, right? That's the 5th, 9th, resolving to the root. Still going to do a pull off there. And then we're doing these double stops. Wow, what a beautiful sound. If that's not indicative of a Spanish romance gone off the rails, then I don't know what is. Check this out again. They're just thirds moving in a parallel motion. And basically, we want to resolve into what would be a G minor chord here. That's the top part of a G minor chord, and then immediately hitting this E. Alright, now that E is the 6th of the G minor. So a very tense interval. It's a natural 6. It's actually a Dorian sound. The first Dorian sound we've had the entire time. This has been in a pretty strict minor key so far. The final phrase ends everything very nicely. It wraps it up perfectly and brings us right back into the pre-chorus, which luckily is also in the key of D minor. And here it is nice and slow. Very, very, very nice. John Petrucci is apparently incredibly adept at Spanish guitar playing. Who would have thunk it? Well, I guess this album really did bring out some of the more eclectic flavors that were encased within his mind this entire time, but didn't quite manifest until the year 1997. I guess because Y2K was getting so close, he had to embrace this side of himself that he never knew that he had. Consciousness has expanded. Big time. Boom. So anyway, we're using this high pedal point A as a nice consistent note up top for the first 2 parts. Watch. Alright, so basically that A is the root note of that A 7th chord, or with that flatted 9th of the G minor going to the A 7th, whatever you want to call it, alright? It's basically going to the flatted 7th right here, and then here. And that's a very altered note. And then to end it, we just bring that A down to an E, to just give it that nice resolution, which is essentially just a sus4, alright? Which comes right back into the D, and it anticipates the root note, which then goes into this nice sweep. So in order to hit that sweep, we got to hit the 7th, 6th, and 5th like this. That's root, flat 3rd, and 5th, straight up, right into the flatted 6th, or B flat. Now look. You want to do sweep, 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 and then an upstroke on that last one, okay? Before you come back down. And have that nice grace note pull off coming downward, and then the last 2 notes are a pull off. Believe it or not, it's a pull off. So you got to make sure you use a lot of strength on that so that we can hear the note pop out into the mix. Watch. Beautiful, and that's the flat 3rd of the D minor that takes over on the pre-chorus section following. After being romanced to death in Arturo Fuentes' Love Den, we find ourselves in a familiar place, the shoreline from the earlier pre-chorus sections. But this time, something is a little bit off about this one. And that comes in the form of the last 2 chords that are played. Check this out, ready? Same 2, but this time, look at that. extended. Much like Arturo's Toblerone, if you know what I'm saying. Anyway, let's get that one more time. Here we go. B flat. And then C for twice as long. And the resolution also twice as long. Alright, now that's just an itty-bitty change under a microscope. But in the context of the whole song, it's a pretty sizable change, like Arturo's Toblerone, if you know what I'm saying. It's a pretty sizable change in the grand scheme of things, considering what happens next with this final chorus. That's right, we have a full-blown key change, up a whole step to the key of G major for the final chorus. And with this key change, we have an entirely different set of positions that we have to learn. Not necessarily more difficult, but just different. Check this out, you'll recognize some of these shapes, believe me. We start off on a regular-ass G major chord. Here we go, ready? G, to a C at 9, to a D sus4. What are we, Green Day? Not anymore. G over B, C at 9, D, and this little thing. G over B, C at 9, D, B7, then we hop all the way here. E minor, over D, to A over C sharp, to C at 9, to D sus4, and then boom. Now that's not the end of the song, but it is the end of the section. So real quickly, we're just going to go over this, some of the curiosities that occur. Now, I never thought I'd see the day that Dream Theater uses the same chords as either Wonderwall or Green Day's Time of Your Life, right? Every middle school graduation knew that song, right? Who knew that Dream Theater was going to go down this route? Try to actually corner the market for middle school graduation songs. I just can't believe it. Could you imagine James LaBrie walking into your middle school during the middle of lunch when your guidance counselor is making a speech or something? I had a guidance counselor named Mr. G, and he spoke like this. Hey, you, section D is in dog, sit down, it's not your turn to get your fries yet. That's exactly how he sounded. Imagine James LaBrie as your guidance counselor. I don't know how much guidance you'll be getting, but let me just keep guiding you through this song. I'll be the guidance counselor here. So, those are the three chords that we're playing. G, C at 9, and D sus4, keeping the D and the G up top the entire time. Just like the electric guitar, right? But we'll see what happens in just a little bit with that. But then, the first time, right? Well, then the first time. The first time we have a root position G. Alright, now this is the first root position chord at the beginning of the chorus that we've seen the entire time. Alright? Remember, before we had the F over A each time. So you would assume that the G would be over the B every single time. With that half-step motion between B to C and then the whole step to D. But it's not. And at first I had no idea why this was the case, but halfway through filming this I had an epiphany. If we were to land a hard key change on an inversion from this C like this, watch this. It just doesn't sound that good. But once you do it like this, going to the root note instead, watch. Gives that first chord a massive explosion right to your face as soon as you hit to it, and a much more stable ground for the entire chorus to draw on. Alright? It just sounds better when you hit the root note, damn it. But then every other time it goes to the B to keep consistent with the earlier choruses. Alright? So the first one's a root position G, and all the other ones are a first inversion G, right? So very cool. Okay, now that's similar to what was going on with that D minor chord we saw before, right? Right, but here we're going from D to E minor, and that's the same exact chord, just in this key. It's still the 6th chord, an E minor 7th, right? Almost like the Wish You Were Here chord, which then resolves into the B. So, nice way to get back into the first chord. This is all the same until we hit this B7, which is just on the 2nd fret of the A string. Alright, so it's a B7 chord. That's the 5 chord to the E minor, which is coming all the way up here. Alright? We're not playing the open E string on the top like we did earlier with the D minor. Okay, we're just playing a straight up E minor chord here. We're actually getting more basic on this chorus. Took long enough for us to get to a real pop song, guys. Thanks a lot. Then after that, we got to go here. Okay, that's just a straight up E minor 7 over D, right? So you got that same shape. Now this is the one you would see more often, all right? Before we were seeing chords that you wouldn't see very often, but I guess, you know, it's the last chorus, you might as well give the audience what they want. Something boring, right? And then we go into here. This is the same deal as that G chord over B, except it's an A over C sharp. Secondary dominant, and then right to C to D, 4 to 5, right into G as the root note for the next chorus tag, which happens. But of course we can't get into that yet, silly Billy. We got to get through this 12-string overdrive part, which gives it that rock and roll feel, or I should say that mid-90s alternative milquetoast radio feel. And it follows a lot of the same patterns as the acoustic guitar was strumming, okay? So just like out of the gate, we are hitting the root note G, but here we're picking these notes in particular. Alright, so we still have the root and the 5th being played up top with the moving bass line, just like we always have. We move to C, do the same thing. D, and look, that F sharp going to a G, that's the same half step motion from before as well. It's just easier to access here, in all honesty. And then of course the second time around we change, we go to the first inversion. To here. And then right on here, you do the same thing. That's that minor 9 going to the flatted 3rd for that nice E minor resolution. Then we come back again, first inversion G, C at 9, D, and then this curious voicing. Now that is actually what's played on the 12 string. The 4th fret here, that's the 5th of the B7, the 3rd, and the 5th. Alright, just in that order. That represents the B chord. And then, instead of going all the way up here like we did in the acoustic, we're going to stay down here. And we're basically going to play this shape. So we got the pointer on the 2nd fret of the D, the ring on the 4th fret of the G, the pinky on the 5th, and the middle on the 3rd right there. And we're going to go like this, strum these exact chords. Or not strum, what am I talking about? Pick these exact notes on the arpeggio. Watch. D string, B string, E string, B string. Just like that on the first one. So you're basically skipping the G string there, and then here, open D, and that's when you hit the G string. Once you hit the D on the bottom, this represents E minor over D, by the way, because, let's face it, that's an E minor chord up top, and there's your flatted 7 on the bottom right there. And then here we're going to hit the A over C sharp, but it's just on the 4th fret of the A string instead of being on the 9th fret like the other part. Same notes and everything, just in a different spot. And then the final resolution, C, D, and then into a nice G chord for the next part. But once again, I lied to you. We're not going to the next part just yet. We have this little lead guitar line that comes in over the top. Kind of halfway through that, it's when all those chords are moving through. You'll see where. But yeah, check out this lead guitar line that colors in this bit a little bit more. There's a lot of color on this album. That's what I'm starting to realize. basically just uses 3 single notes to add a little bit on top. It's basically during the E minor section where it starts coming down. You're just hitting the 5th fret of the D, sliding to the 9th, little bend and release to the 7th, and that's all that's happening. Real easy. Now, harmonically speaking, we're hitting the flat 3rd of the E minor, and then the 5th of the E minor over D, and then the root of the A. So very, 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 very simple stuff. The ending section, which is another longer chorus tag, sees the acoustic guitar and the overdriven 12-string in perfect harmony together. In unison, really, they're playing the same exact part. So check that out, and I'll meet you on the other side. And once you learn one of these guitars, you've learned both. So just get some overdrive on there and let's play some chords a la 1995. Check this out, ready? So we're starting on a G chord. Going through this progression, a very nice progression. Which basically alternates between 2 very subtly different things. So we're starting, I'm actually going to put the clean channel, the Cheen channel, the Charlie Cheen channel for this one. So we're going like this: G to E minor 7, C and 9, D sus4, to E minor. Here's the change. So you want to have a little hammer on onto that E minor 7th, and then a hard downbeat on that D sus4 again. So it's basically going to E minor to D at the very end. Alright, so you got G major, 1, 6, 4, 5, and then 1, 6, 4, 6, 5, and then back in once again. The final half of the last progression gives us a very, very, very busy version of the piano line which we haven't heard yet. For the first time in the song, Derek is turning this tonic chord into a flatted 7th chord, or a G7 with a sus4. It was never played like that ever throughout the entire course of this song. And it's completely odd that he decided to play this because John Petrucci's guitar part couldn't be further away. And he's basically doing this. He's ending on the G, and then in a very free time manner, is going between a D major chord, which has an F sharp on the top, resolving up to the G. Now if you remember, Derek was playing a G7th chord. The only way we can conceivably make this work is if one happens and then the other makes a slick entrance afterwards, which is exactly what happens. In this case, the flat 7 on the piano comes in first, and the major 7th on the guitar comes in after. This succession allows for this dissonance to exist here. Let's get both the piano and the guitar one more time. Oddly beautiful. And right after that, Derek Sherinian gets the final word in with this beautifully played low octave G on the piano. What a nice note that he plays there. But he always has to have the last word now, doesn't he? Very, very annoying. Maybe that's why they kicked him out of the band. I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to get the last word right now because that is the final word of this video, or the final words of this video. Thank you very much for everybody coming along this journey. This was been Hollow Years. Let me tell you something about that. This has been Hollow Years by Dream Theater. A simpler song, but hopefully you still enjoyed it. Even when Dream Theater does simple music, they have their own spin on it and they make it a little more complex than what you would ordinarily see from, say, you know, Green Day or Oasis, or a band like that that was prominent during this time period. So once again, thank you very much. If you'd like to further support the channel, go to www.subscribestar.com. I have a couple different options available now. From this point forward, the $5 option on Subscribestar is going to get an extended cut of this video. Okay, so if you're on YouTube right now, you're not going to get the entire thing that I do. Trust me, you're going to get most of it. Don't worry, don't worry. It's still going to be every single note, every single time change, but I'm going to leave a little more incentive for people to join that $5 option, okay? And trust me, it's going to be well worth it, because you're going to get a lot more background on the song, a lot more orchestration and things of that nature as well. Production tips, way more stuff than you would get here. Maybe not way more, but a significant amount more that would make it worth it to pledge $5 a month for little old me over here. The $20 option will get you access to the RomanOva Guitar Gym. That's basically an exclusive series to that tier. A lot of theory, a lot of exercises, a lot of cool stuff going on with the guitar. There's never a shortage of cool things happening with the guitar. And it's always guitar season, by the way. Alright? Always guitar season. Today is guitar season, tomorrow's going to be guitar season. A year from now, trust me, it's going to be guitar season. Alright everybody, thank you very much. Once I start slurring my words, that's when I know that it's the end of the video, because I've been doing this for quite a bit now. Alright? And by the time these videos are done and I'm done filming, I'm done. Right? I'm done filming. So that's why it's important that you pledge your support, like and subscribe, comment on the videos, help me attack this YouTube algorithm, which is basically like this amorphous jellyfish that nobody can describe. Everybody thinks they got it figured out, but it never actually seems to happen. So thank you very much, and I'll see you on the next one. Hopefully you know what that is. Alright, since this was episode number 4, episode number 5 is going to be something mighty good, just like everything on Falling into Infinity has been, right? Alright everybody, I'll see you next time.